Hi, everyone. My name is Niklas Kunkel. I'm the founder of Chronicle. Small blurb, I guess, about my history. Was part of the founding team of Maker back in late 2016 and created the first production oracle on Ethereum. So what I want to talk to you kind of about today is for those of you that have been in the space for a while, right, you've kind of seen these repeated cycles of like boom and bust, boom and bust, boom and bust. And while in DeFi we are really, really good at mechanism design and incentives, what we've really created is kind of this like hyper-reflexive system, right? So when yields go up, when leverage goes up, right? The TVL of a protocol, right? Balloons, great, right? So it's all hyper-reflexive with does number go up? Because if number goes down, everything goes in reverse, right? All of our kind of flywheel effects, right, go the other way. And so this is quite a big problem. And so kind of from my experience at Maker wasn't immune to this. And so I want to kind of tell you a little bit about the journey that we went on to trying to solve this problem. And rather than this being like one of these like very like philosophical like RWA talks, I want this one to be like very tangible and real, right, with examples and what worked and what didn't. So quick shout out about Chronicle. We are a spin-out of MakerDAO. We are a generalized Oracle protocol that anyone can use and are currently securing MakerDAO, Spark protocol, as well as a plethora of other kind of top DeFi protocols. And cumulatively, we secure around $10 billion in TVL. So back to Maker. So I think a quick kind of way to illustrate is through the numbers, right? So here, this is maybe a couple months dated, but I think the important thing here will kind of be like the ratios. So this is kind of a look at Maker's book, right? How does Maker make money, right? And so you'll see that, right, there's some ETH vaults, some staked ETH vaults, some wrapped BTC ones, right? There is a credit line extended to Spark protocol, right? And so all of these things are earning like a good chunk of revenue. So it's around $155 million. I think give or take, maybe it's like 20 to 30 million more today. So this is all kind of sourced from crypto, right? That's what I kind of want you to get away from kind of this table. This is just the money Maker is making on crypto. And this is the money that Maker's making from real-world assets. So the names here are a little bit more conspicuous, but for the most part, what these different vehicles are doing, if you look at like the top two ones are vehicles for getting exposure to U.S. Treasury bills, right? So U.S. short-dated Treasury bills yielding somewhere on the order of 4 to 5%. Then you have Coinbase, right? Coinbase, if you lock up USDC with them, right, will offer you a yield. So you can get yield that way. There is a US bank called Huntington Valley Bank that Maker made a deal with. It's not a huge bank. I would just not a JP Morgan or a Citibank, just a very regular bank. And what does a regular bank do? Right? Well, they extend loans so people can buy houses, right? And so, what does a bank like this need? Well, it needs cash to lend out to people who need mortgages. So, Maker is extending a credit line of $100 million in cash to Huntington Valley Bank, who then in turn, right, gives it out in the form of housing loans to people who need a house loan, right? And effectively, the bank keeps 50% exposure to the loan, and we keep the other 50% exposure to kind of ensure there's no moral hazard misalignment, right? And so I don't want to dwell on this too long, right? So there's quite a few other ones on here as well. But you start to see that there's quite a diversity of stuff kind of going here. And so when you kind of put these two pictures together, right, this crypto-sourced revenue and this real-world asset-sourced revenue, I think this slide is really like illustrative of like this journey Maker went on, right? So in the blue, you see only the crypto-sourced revenue, right? So going all the way back, right, to 2019, right? You just see this like boom, right? That's the cycle, and then nothing, right? And then boom, and then nothing, and then boom, and then, right, craters. You know, it may be good to take a second to reflect, right, on like why this boom bust thing is so bad, right? It's not just bad for you, like as an investor. If you're like holding a token and it just like goes up, and then you feel like you made a lot of money, right, and then it goes down, and then you're sad again, right? There's much more fundamental problems here, right? So maybe not from the investor side, but from like the organization side. You know, when you're making a lot of money, right, there's a lot of growth opportunities, right? You hire a lot of people, right? Salaries are going up, right? Salary expectations are higher from people that you want to recruit. And then when the bear market happens and all of a sudden you don't have all of this revenue coming in, right? All of these amazing people that you hired, all of these products that you started building but didn't finish, right? All of these high salaries you're paying but now can't afford, right? You need to cut all of these people and cut all of these products, right? So it's a very destabilizing type of situation for an organization, right? Which is why you want to like smooth this out, right? It's not necessarily about revenue maximization, rather than making sure that, right, you get revenue from a variety of sources, and hopefully they're not correlated. So when one is down, right, the other one's doing okay, or, you know, even best case scenario, right, they're inversely correlated, right? So if one goes up, the other goes down. If one goes down, the other goes up. So taking a look at the yellow, right, that's, I mean, the yellow and red are essentially a Maker's real-world asset revenue, right? And so you can see that, you know, we start off very small, right, doing some experiments. We're not quite sure. We're just feeling it out, right? And then we start to figure it out, right? We get our groove, and, you know, very, very quickly, like in the span of 2 years, right, RWA revenue now accounts for about a little over a third of all of MakerDAO's cumulative revenue. So, right, that's it, right? That's the whole talk, right? We've solved this this problem, right? Everyone just use RWAs, great. Not so fast, right? Because it's much easier said than done to do this. Because there's quite a big problem with RWAs in that they're not crypto native. So what does that mean by crypto native? Well, you know, if you have a, I don't know, a Uniswap token, right, on-chain. This Uniswap token, right, has a bunch of properties, right, and you can even look at the Uniswap protocol contract and grab some numbers from there, right? The total volume, the total transactions done, how much TVL do they have, right? There is all this contextual data that is readily available for any smart contract to consume on-chain. And this is what real-world assets don't have. Because real-world assets themselves are really just kind of dummy representations on chain of something that really is just, in the meat space, in off-chain. And so you start to realize that if, as a protocol, you want to integrate an RWA, you're going to need a lot more of this context, a lot more of this metadata in order to integrate it and emulate the behavior of a crypto native token. And so while this is certainly not an exhaustive list, I think the ones that I've put up here kind of can give you an idea of what might be important. The problem with RWAs is that each one is quite bespoke, right? And so not each of these, right, will apply to each one, right? And depending on what we're talking about, there may be others that are much more important, right, than any of these. So that's to say, not an exhaustive list, but just to kind of give you an idea. So let's kind of talk about how some of these can be useful. I think the most obvious one is probably custody. I think that's the most intuitive for people, right? Here, I think the go-to example is probably stablecoins, right? Hey, I just launched this stablecoin, and you can trust it. It's worth $1. It's backed by T-bills, right? Go and use it. Okay. How do I know it's backed by T-bills? How do I know the T-bills are there, right? Well, okay. So you can report that, hey, right, I connected to the custodian, in some cases a bank, right, that's custodying these securities, and I vouch, right, that there's X many of T-bills there. Lovely. Okay, so now we know that there's 100 million T-bills, and there's, 99 million stablecoins, and the stablecoin is fully backed, right, and you can trust the stablecoin. Right, so I think that example is probably pretty clear, right, and that's already been done for a number of years now, right. I think some of the other ones get a little more complex, right. So let's talk about yield. Everybody's a yield farmer here. You want to get the most return for your investment. Protocols do too. Right, so when Maker is thinking, okay, which, RWA do they, commit capital to? Do they commit additional exposure to? There are a variety of problems that come with, well, what's the yield, right? And in many cases, right, the yield is changing. So you need this information pipeline, right? You need this metadata. So you need something like an Oracle to report, well, for this RWA, it's been over the past, 30 days, it's been yielding 3.5%, and this one's been yielding 4.5%, and this one's been yielding 6.5%. Right? So when so with all of this information, rather than someone manually noticing this, queuing up a transaction in a multi-sig, chasing down a bunch of signers to get them to vote, or putting up a governance proposal and getting the community to vote on it, right? You can just have smart automation in your protocol now, right? Hey, protocol, if the difference in yield between the lowest and the highest is ever, more than 1%, move some capital, in X size chunks or Y percentage chunks, from the lowest one to the highest one, right? These are not very difficult things to do from a technology perspective, but I think from a protocol perspective, they're quite powerful, right? Liquidity, right, is another. Okay, when you have an on-chain asset, right, you tend to have liquidity on-chain, right? So when, let's say, a loan needs to get liquidated because the price of the collateral token is dropping, right? It's not a problem, right? You do a liquidation, auction, or sale, right? And someone goes and buys that and sells it on a DEX because there's a bunch of liquidity on-chain. RWAs don't have liquidity on-chain. They have liquidity off-chain. And although for some RWAs, like T-bills, right, is the most liquid market in the world, does that help you on-chain, right? When you need to go through the very slow meat space process of getting that liquidation sale to happen off-chain. So I think T-bills maybe aren't the best example here because there's other things that are much less liquid. But essentially, you start to sometimes price things, right? Not just based off of what they're trading at, but based off of the liquidity that is available, right? So knowing, having this metadata of there is X amount of liquidity available versus like that liquidity shrunk by 50% or it doubled, right? Will help you manage a credit position, right? So you may be comfortable, right, having, 10% of the total, NAV exposure of a particular asset, right? But you don't want to cross that 15% threshold because it just puts you at a lot of risk. So I kind of want to start like closing up here, but essentially, right, not an exhaustive list, but I think I would hope that what you learned today is, right, RWAs aren't like the easy solution that fixes everything, but they are a very good solution. And so those of you in DeFi, I really do think you should think about incorporating them. I think it will be like a net positive for your protocol. I think it'll be a net positive for your revenue. I think your token holders will be happy and your investors will also be happy. But what I am saying is, be careful and be considerate and don't just, chuck it in there and think that everything is going to be fine, right? These are much more complex beasts than anything that you're used to on the crypto native side. And they need to be handled with a level of diligence that is commensurate with that. And so the final kind of piece that I kind of want to leave you with today is that forget kind of everything you know about oracles, because I think kind of the word oracle kind of got poisoned over the year to just immediately make people think of like, oh, the thing that tells you a price. I think within a few years' time, like an oracle telling you the price will be the least useful thing that an oracle actually does in not just DeFi, but in the greater crypto ecosystem. Oracles are going to become this data interoperability layer between off-chain and on-chain. And I hope that people are quick to recognize, right, how powerful of a primitive that's going to be. And, we were just talking about diligence, right? How much diligence you should do when selecting an oracle. I'm not going to be up here and just shill you hours. That's fine. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of good oracles out there, right? But do your research and be thorough about your research and don't just listen to the BD person and trust everything they say. So that's it for me today. Thank you all for listening. If you're interested in finding out more, you can go to our website and follow our socials or join our Discord. We also have like a really cool dashboard that I think you'll really like if you want to check it out. Okay.